For those of you that's new to the district, I'm your council person, your representative. So if you have any issues, you can reach me via email. I'll give you my phone call afterwards. While we're here, this is a progression of the work that started many years ago due to your HOA. So for many of you, you may not have known, your HOA used to be just some neighbors leading a charge, and they did it very, very well. That's how we are here tonight. We started with just some traffic calming, narrowing the road, and this meeting here is building upon that. Years ago, led by your HOA, they requested that a traffic study be done, and they did that, showing the speeding. You had some accidents. We had children at bus stops, and many of you expressed the concern for that and wanted to do something for your neighborhood. So I will say this, out of all the HOAs in District 28, you guys remain to be the most active HOA, the most active and the most consistent and one of the largest neighborhoods in District 28. So you do need to know that. I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Hammond, because this is my first time seeing this with you guys. So I'll turn it over to him now.
Thank you, Councilmember Vercher, and thank all of you all for your attendance and participation tonight. I know this is weird. I'm up here wearing a headset and holding the microphone up. We're in, I would say, two places. We're in a lot of different places tonight. You guys are all here, obviously. We have about 35 in the room. We also have a number of folks that have called in from wherever they are and are listening to us and watching this presentation as we go. The other reason we do that, one, it's convenient for them, but also we are recording this. So if you have neighbors that weren't able to be here, reach out to us. We're going to give you some contact information. We'll be glad to get this recording to them so that they can watch it at a later date. My name is Jeff Hammond. I'm a consultant for the Nashville Department of Transportation, NDOT. You'll see that a lot on these slides. That's the newest department in the city of Nashville. It's the old Public Works Department rebranded essentially and became NDOT. So we handle all things within the right-of-way. A lot of the work that the Public Works Department did. With me is Ariana Martin. She's a colleague of mine, and she's hosting the meeting online. So we're going to go through basically three components to this presentation. One is a little bit of background on the program itself and how you all got here. And then secondly, some of the tools that we have at our disposal. And then lastly, we're going to look, but probably mainly, we want to spend the time looking at the proposal the draft proposal that we have for Piccadilly Row. Get your thoughts on it, get your comments, see what you think about it, and go from there. And we do apologize for the mix-up. On the bright side of that is we were all early, and a couple of us were early. Most of you guys were right on. So if you're just now getting here, you have not missed anything. We're just getting started for a 6:30 meeting. We like to think of traffic calming, but really safety in general, roadway safety is having 3 E's. There's an education component where you just got to make sure that there's some basic information that drivers understand, like the speed limit and things like that. We'll talk more about some of the tools we have in that area. A big one is enforcement. A lot of times we're asked, why can't we just get a few police officers to sit at the bottom of the hill and write some tickets? That would help, wouldn't it? And it would, at least for a short period of time. But two aspects to that. One is traffic does tend to go back to the way it's performing now, the longer period of time it is since that officer's been there. And secondly, MNPD is kind of busy. They got a lot to do, big job to do, and traffic enforcement, unfortunately, is not always at the top of their agenda. So what we focus on is the 30. That's the engineering part. That's where we come in and we can affect some change to the roadway to try and get motorists to behave more the way we would want them to when driving through a residential area. And we do that by the tools and techniques in this traffic calming program. This is a residential program. We really try and focus on areas where it's streets. It's where you walk at night. It's where your kids are playing. It's where you live. That's the gist of this. We do focus on physical solutions. Sometimes we will work on some of those educational components, but we know what is most effective, and that is you got to put something in the street if you really want to see a major impact. we do focus on reducing speeds as opposed to trying to solve cut-through traffic. Piccadilly Row is not a cut-through neighborhood. People live here generally, unless they just like driving hills and curves. I mean, maybe that's part of it. I don't know. People go to East Tennessee just to ride motorcycles and curves. I know, so but maybe that's happening here. But for the most part, these are people that there's no outlets here. In other words, these are the people that are speeding live here or have business, visiting friends or what have you in the neighborhood. And then we focus on trying to solve speeds over significant lengths. We're not as focused on what might be happening at one problematic area. I don't think that is probably the case in this neighborhood, but sometimes you have real small pedestrian issues that are very specific to one location. We have shifted to focus more on streets and not neighborhoods, and that has really streamlined the process, and we can say more about that, but the end result of that is we're really trying to get projects on the ground in a much more efficient way based on some of those changes. And then, of course, safety is always a big part of this, and it is competitive. We'll come back to that. Talking about other needs that you might have in the area, we always like to point out Hub Nashville is a great place to start for anything. And that's not just NDOT or right-of-way issues, that's any metro department. Hub.Nashville.gov is a great place to start, and it'll walk you through any service requests that you have for metro government. I did mention that it is a high demand program. You all got here but we just had a summer selection where people applied in back in the wintertime. Back in July, we selected all your neighborhoods. You all were one of them, and we go to work from there. Well, at that time, there were over 400 streets just like Piccadilly Road that someone had applied in and said, you need to come look at this street. And so we rank all of this and come up with the top 24 neighborhoods. So congratulations, you're one of those, but also I'm sorry, you are one of those because we are only taking the top ones or the bottom ones, however you look at it. And this is how we make that decision. So we do come out and collect data on all 400 some odd streets, and that data is the same for all of them. 70% of the data is safety driven, and that's two components. One is the measured speeds on the street, how fast are people going, and the other is what's been the crash history on the street. How many crashes did you have? Yeah, so we do look at that and pay attention, and those trends, we don't typically jump and respond every time there is one, but those trends become evident over a period of time, years. So I'm sorry.
Somebody has to die.
So not necessarily, but we're here in this program because there has been a documented body of evidence. That's the point I'm making. So that's 70% of the selection. The other 30% has to do more with mobility issues. We know a lot of people ask for traffic calming just because they're not comfortable getting out on the street and walking in the evenings. You know, there's a non-motorized user aspect to it, and so we look at, are there neighborhood destinations that people would like to walk to but just can't? I mean, y'all live pretty close to all the business and stuff along Murfreesboro Road, but does anybody ever walk to Murfreesboro Road? It would be hard. It would be hard. And so we look at that and pay attention to that, the lack of sidewalks and the presence of those types of opportunities. So anyway, all of that rolled up together has put you all in that top 24. That's why we're here to do a project on Piccadilly Road. What was requested was Piccadilly, interestingly, from White Mountain Lane to Orchard Mountain Court. Now, we're going to come to that. I don't know if you even know where those streets are. If you don't, I'll show you. So right up here, you see Orchard Mountain Court. If you turn in at the signal, that's the first little cul-de-sac right there on the left. That's Orchard Mountain. And the next street up there as you go up the hill is White Mountain. So that was what was actually requested, okay? But what we're going to do, because we like to have, you know, kind of a logical termini for these projects, we're going to look at the entire length of Piccadilly Road from Una Antioch all the way back down to Una Antioch, okay?
one of them that takes lives. You have shields.
Yeah.
We have to make an application.
Well, so the main point of this slide is that's the scope of this project, and that's right. If there are other streets that you would like to have considered, you know, we still have those application periods. You can apply into that, but for now, that's the street that we're looking at. Okay. All right. So a few of the things that we'll look at installing as part of the project. We like to start with this one. This one's kind of the bread and butter of our program. Some people probably think of this as the speed hump program, the speed bump program, the speed cushion program, and that's okay because we use these an awful lot. We're proposing them here on this street, and we use them because they work. They're effective. The other nice thing about them is they're a known commodity. We know how traffic operates with them. Unlike some of the other tools, that it really is site dependent. You know, sometimes weird things happen, but with these, they're very dependable. They hold up really well. It's the same vendor. We use the same product, so you can go other places around and kind of experience these for yourself if you want to. It'll be the same product. Billingsgate, got them?
Yeah, I have a question about this. So a local neighborhood, Billingsgate, has this, and just like the picture on the left, it's kind of in the center. And then what happened is that people were just going around it.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, it's kind of expand the length, the entire width of the street.
Yeah. So
they did.
Yeah. So there was a question in the room, and by the way, guys, when you ask a question, I'm going to read it back in just so that the people that are online can hear us. So the question was, the slide that you're seeing now, and this tends to happen on wider streets as we have here on Piccadilly. If we don't extend those all the way to the edges, cars will drive around. And so, yes, the answer to that is we have some design considerations I'll show you in just a second to counter that. Speed cushions are called what they are because they look like little cushions. It's not one big continuous thing. And one of the major reasons for that is, like you're seeing in that picture on the right, just for emergency vehicle access. The only thing special about that is those are wider wheelbase vehicles. So they have an easier time. They can't totally straddle them, but they have an easier time. And you might not can see where you're sitting, but these are tapered on the ends here. So when they go, they don't go full speed still, but they can maintain a little bit higher speed over them and not be as affected. Cars can't do that. So a car coming through here is going to have to put one side of their tires on one of these things. There's no way around it if we design it right. So you may not have to hit them both, but I have found the easiest way to drive those is just to head on, hit them both wheels going over the same hump. You can do about as well. I mentioned some of the educational things. We use these occasionally. We're still doing some evaluation on the long-term effectiveness of them. We know they have a pretty good short-term impact, but if you see this feedback sign day after day after day, do you change your behavior? We're looking at some of that now, but we do have some of these around town, different places. That's kind of an educational component, giving immediate feedback that, you know, when you're coming down the hill there toward Orchard Mountain, toward the signal, you may not realize all of a sudden you're going 40 miles an hour because, I mean, that's a pretty big hill there. You can pick up speed pretty quick, and so maybe that could be a possibility. Pavement markings, we have done some experimentation that NDOT has. Again, still looking at the effectiveness of that, but sometimes these zigzag patterns or some hatch marks can kind of trick drivers into understanding that they're going a little too fast. What we use pavement markings mostly for, though, is to visually narrow the street. So Piccadilly Road's 38 feet wide from curb to curb. And so you've got two 11-foot traffic lanes. That's a very standard width, nothing wrong there. But then you also got those 8-foot parking lanes. So all told, you got 38 feet wide. That's really wide. That's a wide street. If you're ever in, you know, in Germantown or East Nashville or Woodland or Waverly, some of these more historic neighborhoods closer to town, they may be approaching that wide, but then there's constant parking on both sides, so it feels really tight. And we don't have nearly as many speeding issues on those streets just because you don't want to drive over 30 miles an hour. It feels too fast. And so, but when you get in a more suburban context like we have here, you have no problem going 40, and it really doesn't feel that uncomfortable. So sometimes we can narrow that, and it might make a difference. I think you already have good striping out there. I mean, the pavement looks pretty new and all of that, but speed tables are really just a different type of design for that same speed cushion concept. They are a little longer on top, so we might use these on a street that has a higher traffic volume or where we, that's right. And these, yeah, if you hit them too fast, yeah. So these are longer, and so they will allow a little bit of a higher speed on them. Y'all's traffic count is right about 700 cars a day. Is that surprising? Did you know you had that many cars on the street? Really? A lot of times we'll say that number and people are surprised there's that much traffic. That's actually for us a fairly low traffic count, or, you know, that's fitting for this street. So I don't think you have a really high traffic count, so I think the cushions are still good. But we had a question in the back. Yes, sir? Uh-huh. Yeah, the question was using the white poles. It's a flexible plastic delineator. We are, and that actually gets back to the question that was asked up here about how do we keep people from driving around these things, and that's one method that we can use. And then traffic circles. Again, this is something we've used sometimes. This is one of those, though, that can have some impacts that, you know, sometimes we can't always predict how traffic is going to interact with these. A lot of people drive in front of them. School buses have some issues. You got to have a lot of pavement to be able to have this in the middle of an intersection. So we don't use them very often, but it is a tool that we have. And then chicanes is a very urban one. We were in a neighborhood last night, actually, that has had these for some years over by Aiken Elementary School, and they still need more traffic calming. So if that tells you anything, if you do them right and well, and really make that a hard zigzag pattern, it can slow traffic down. But it's meant to kind of replicate what you have with on-street parking sometimes, you know, where you have to zigzag through traffic to slow down. So the process. We're here at meeting one. I know that's small for some of you guys in the back, but the red circle there says meeting one. You've already made your application. You've already been selected. This meeting is not about funding or, you know, anything like this. Meeting is to talk about what you want to see in terms of this project at this point. And so we'll go back and take any feedback from what I'm going to show you here on the next slide, and go back and modify that, change that, and make it a little more formal. We'll get to the point where we've got solid design plans that you can actually see if you live on this street, where your driveway is, where the closest speed cushion would be, and then we're going to come back and talk, you know, show that to you and talk more in a second meeting then, and then from that point we go to an online ballot process, and we'll talk more about that ballot process if you're interested after the plan. So there's our contact information. I'm Jeff Hammond at birchtransportation.com, and then Gil Thomas, who is on the online part, is our program manager with Metro Government, with NDOT. So I can put this back up. A couple of y'all are taking pictures, which is great. All right, so again, this is, I will walk through this. I know in the back this is probably a little more difficult to make out, but after, if you want to come up and we'll spend as much time as you want to looking at this. So to orient you, you've got Una Antioch running this way down along the bottom. You see the signal here at the north end of the street and a stop sign at the south end of the street. So I guess just working from the signal going up the hill, these little symbols, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them are our recommended placement for speed cushions, okay? So these are going to be, in this case, because it's as wide as it is, we would recommend 3 cushions like we saw in that picture before, and on the outside of that, a configuration with one of those white delineators that you see right there. And so we might double those up. That's an 8-foot wide parking lane, so we'll probably put 2 of them there just to make sure people can't drive around those things. The cushions will also get outside of the lanes probably just a little bit, but between all of that, you'll have no choice but to stay in the lane and go over the cushions. That's the recommended configuration, would be 3 with the poles on the outside. There'll also be signs along with that, you know, so that mark every location where you're going to encounter one of those. So anyway, back to where we've got them planned. The first place we can get them is pretty quickly after you turn onto the street, but after you get past that Orchard Mountain Drive that we talked about. You don't have much room, and then it gets pretty steep pretty quick. So our requirements for putting these on grades is we don't like to do them when the street is any steeper than 6%, and we don't do them at all if it's steeper than 8%. And the conditions that, you know, as you get into 6, 7, 8% have to be pretty ideal. And here you've got a lot of curves, vertical curves where you're turning the steering wheel, and horizontal and vertical curves where you're going up and down. And so that's why we've got, after this first one, right after that cul-de-sac, which is a good placement. It's kind of like, welcome to Piccadilly Road, slow down, you know. But unfortunately, going up the side of the hill, we're not going to recommend any for a little gap there. The good part is there's no driveways there. There's no houses there. You're going up through between the apartments. Okay.
So I live on that stretch. Twice this year, 2 cars have hit my property. They are gone so fast that they've come from the other side of the road, crossed the median, hit my property. They're going fast. Yeah.
Well, and so what we would hope is by putting them as close to that hill as we can on either side of it, we would affect some change before they start going down or before they start going up. It's not a foolproof system by any means. Yeah. So it's about 9%. Yeah. It's steep. Yeah. And so we've done some very preliminary looking, and so all of these are based on, a lot of these are anywhere you see a gap, like that's a pretty obvious gap between those first two. It's because of the hill. There's another really bigger gap than what we would hope in between over by Regents Park Circle, where you're coming around a hill and then it's pretty steep there. We've got a fairly good gap there at the apartment entrance there. So this project, more than any I've worked on to this point, is really dictated by these curves and these grades. We have to put these where people can see them. You know, some of these curves are pretty sharp, so we don't put them right at the end of a curve if we can help it. But we've done our best to get as much on here as we can, given those two constraints. And I really think we've got a good plan here. I think we'll be very happy with the results of this. It's just that there are some gaps where I wish we could get another set, but it's going to be very difficult. So coming on past Blue Mountain Road or White Mountain on one street, you kind of go through some switchbacks. The little yellow numbers up there, so that first one is 728. That's just the address. So roughly in that area of 728 Piccadilly would be another set right before Aldersgate. Okay, coming from this direction. And then you come on around the curve, and that I call that the back stretch. Once you come around that curve, it gets pretty level, and it's a long, straight shot. I would imagine people are going fast through there. But the good part about that is it is straight, and it is fairly level, so we can get 3 good sets. We're trying to get about 500 feet in between these, and we know that if we do that, that will give us a good consistent. They're close enough together that people don't get over them and then gun it to get to the next one. But it's not too close that it's just totally onerous for everybody to drive across these every day.
One of the things that I would like to see added, I don't know how you would do it, you're the engineer, but on those steep, tight curves, we walk our dog on Piccadilly Road, and people drive on the median, like as they're coming around.
On the shoulder? Yeah, they cut it. Okay.
Every time I walk on that. Is there any way to maybe even put those white things up along that divides the shoulder from the road?
Yeah, so a really good observation here in the room. As they're going around the curve, people are cutting into the shoulder, presumably to just cut the curve and keep your speed up, you know, like a race car would. So,
sometimes it's right there, that's why they just put
okay.
They have a lot of share.
So the question is, can we do anything on those curves to kind of prevent that? And that's something we can certainly take a look at. The only downside to it, and it's probably really not much of a downside, it might precludes some of the parking, but if we do it periodically enough, you could still get in there to park, you know.
Well,
So.
inside there's no parking because those are all the back of the house. There's no.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll pay attention to that, but yeah. 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 So the comment about sidewalks, it would be great. It's just not this program, and it's just not funded for sidewalks. Yeah. Well, we'll have to talk to the sidewalk folks, but I don't have that. That wasn't in my toolbox. Yeah. But, yes, sir. The question is, are those the only things that we do? We've tried to show a pretty good representation. I wouldn't say that's absolutely it. I mean, if there are some tools online that you can go back and take a look at, and you say, hey, have y'all ever done this? Could we look at that? We welcome that. But this program, again, going back to just trying to be streamlined, it's kind of like if we know how these work, we know the costs, and we know we got a vendor to provide this, if we stick with this, we can get the project fairly quickly. But we're always open to, if you've got suggestions, we'll be glad to.
I run this circle maybe 3 or 4 times a week, and I get hit almost every day because people do drive over the white line quite often. And is it possible if you can put some of those things when you drive on the highway and go a little too far?
Yeah, a comment about well, there's a couple of different ways. I mean, you can groove the pavement. That's a rumble strip. There's you can just do layers of pavement marking and kind of create a rumble strip. And then there's the little bumps, right, that are reflective. I think if you give something that they don't want to hit, I don't think people mind running over that stuff. I really don't. I mean, it might have some effectiveness, but I think they don't want to hit those white poles. You know, they don't want to tear their car up. But that's probably a tool that we do have to answer your question. Would be those? Is that what you're talking about? The little reflective bumps?
I mean, I was thinking about the grooves. Like
Okay. Yeah, the grooves. Yeah.
And you go over to the side, your car starts shaking. You tend to get out.
Yeah, right. They're very noisy, and so that's when we're working in a residential area. You know, we try to pay attention to that. That will get on somebody's nerves for sure if you live right there by it. But it's.
Hold on.
Here comes the hot rod. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you plan to get, our neighborhood have changed over the years. There are houses that have many cars, I don't know how many people can get in a house. How do you plan to get away with, like when you build those, and nobody should really be too late parking.
Go ahead and finish your question. I'll make sure I understand. Like parking on them, or?
How do you plan to move or to attach these things when the streets are parking lots
Okay.
themselves?
So a question there about how do these impact parking on the street? So.
Are you going to say move your car because we're going to put this and then next?
Oh, just for construction? Yeah, for construction. Uh-huh.
So as a safety measure, what I did with my family is don't outside. Yeah. I had to say, but that's it.
That's not good, yeah.
I can get this myself.
Yeah.
I can't leave my driveway in the morning because there is I can see the other way because the streets are being, including the yard, is a parking lot. So as a safety measure for my family is don't outside. And if we are going outside, we have a sidewalk. But I have seen a mailbox hit. I have seen this myself. We have teenager drivers who get less than I think I have seen a car split.
Yeah.
I have seen these, what you call the bikes. So for my own safety, and then I don't see anybody get hurt, I just go outside.
Yeah.
And when I do, it's like not relaxed.
Well, we can come up with something so that your only recourse is to stay indoors. That's not how anybody wants to be. So, but I understand. So what I would say is one thing that we don't, it's hard to communicate this because you haven't had these, but what we see in neighborhoods a lot of times is when we put these speed cushions, it doesn't impact parking, it impacts speed. And so now if the cars are slow on your street, it's kind of a totally different environment now. And a lot of these situations, these issues, like someone may say, well, I have a problem pulling out of this side street because cars are always flying. Well, we're not going to do anything about the sight distance, whatever, but cars won't be flying around the corner now. You know, it's kind of a different context. And so if we can just solve the speed problem, that takes care of probably 90% of the issues. Yeah.
So you can't go down Blue Mountain. If I tell you they go down Blue Mountain,
yeah.
Why can't we have some speed?
It would just be in a different project. You can apply for it. Yeah.
And it'll take years. You gotta be persistent.
So the question there was asking about another street and why can't we extend it as part of that? So yeah. One other thing about the point you were making about cars parked on the street, I want to be sure I'm clear. Yeah, while they're constructing, cars will be moved off, but that's like a matter of 30 minutes while they come out and bolt it at any one location. It's a very quick installation process. The whole project might be 2 or 3 days and they would be done with this one. But after the fact, everything's back to normal. The speed cushions are there. Cars, we're not gonna try and preclude anybody from parking right there. They can park right beside these things. They can park up on them if there's room. You know what I mean? So I think parking will still occur just the way it does today, with or without these. We're not proposing any changes to stop that. Okay. So your shoulder will still be there. If that's where you set your garbage cans, it's still there. If that's where you park, you can still do that. All that's the same. Yes, ma'am.
So the parking on the street, is it a speed thing? Because I thought the other HOAs, and I see
with no parking on them, you mean? Yeah. Yeah, so the question is that a city requirement? It is. This is an official City of Nashville street. Some streets in Nashville are private. You know, it's obvious if you pull in the apartments, you're now on their property, and they can do whatever they want with the parking. Go ahead.
the main street, Piccadilly Road, would that be considered public and all
Yes.
the other streets are considered public? Or?
I think everything here is. I know Piccadilly is. I think all the others are public too.
It's gonna be a start. It's gonna be a start, and then I think we need to go into the.
Traffic cars on the street. My business is busy. There were times just trying to cross through. People see, and the speed bumps is not gonna help. So
Yeah.
that's why my initial question is it a HOA? You said HOA or city thing? How can we fight the change? That's what I'm. Yes, I know that.
Well, you could serve on the board of the HOA.
Yay! There you go.
Well, so just to clarify that. Sure. Yeah.
I said it earlier, like how we got to this point, and I believe at the time, that Peter, you may have been the president, where we were working with, Piccadilly HOA and the Oakwood HOA, and it was another name, Fort Ridge HOA, and we had to bring all these concerns to the table. Some HOAs updated their bylaws and their charters, to include all that. Oakwood was one of them. Fort Ridge, they kind of did it, but the HOA, is pretty much like how this HOA started, it was just neighbors actually managing it before it was a management type company. So you can address that through your HOA and through your documents. Public roads, anyone can park on them. Every street in this neighborhood, what is the Donald Street over here? How many homes is over here? 270. Right, 272. Every car, technically, if they wanted to, and I don't know your charter as it relates to, if you require them to park in the driveway, car facing forward, to require them to park in the garage. Some HOAs in the district are that strict.
and some are a little more loose. I got some questions in the back. This isn't an HOA meeting. This is just, let me finish. This is just a traffic calming meeting, okay, for Piccadilly, okay? The issue with code enforcement, police response, and I know I'm getting it because I'm here, okay? But I'm sure y'all are gonna have another HOA meeting. So we're gonna hash all these things out. This is the first District 28 traffic calming meeting since COVID. Since COVID, okay? So we're gonna get all those issues hashed out. The other part of it too, there's been a lot of turnover in metro government since we last met. We have new department heads. We have new processes. For you that went through the first traffic calming process with this neighborhood, you know the process changed, and that's why we're here tonight. But for all those other issues, let's keep those to your respective HOA meetings. And I don't know when that'll be called at a later date. Carol, are you? Or no, Julie, I'm still here. Yes, ma'am.
I think I want to make a point that a lot of people don't know in here is that this was done by Pinnacle Point. If you live on Piccadilly Road, like I do, and I've been there for 6 years, that's a different HOA, and I've been there for 6 years, and we've never had a meeting. So if you're having, some of you may be having questions, and you're listening, and hear someone talk about having meetings and stuff, and you're saying, I've never heard about this. That's because if you come right by that light, that little cul-de-sac, these are people, and that's their HOA. That has nothing to do with the rest of Piccadilly Road. So that's why a lot of people in this room are confused, because we have never had a meeting, but they keep trying to charge us. They have not money, but they're trying to charge us. So what we're going to do, because we have 15 minutes. We got 15 minutes. What we're going to do is we're going to let Mr. Hammond finish so we can see what we're getting from this actual application process, okay?
All right, thank you. Good question. So I think we've pretty well gotten through the placement of these. There's one or two more.
Yeah, out of respect, come on.
And so again, if you know, we can talk in the parking lot or whatever. If we need to get out of the room and be glad to go into as much detail as you want. And again, this is recording. But it is a pretty straightforward. It's speed cushions at various locations around the street. I did want to touch on one more thing, and we can go back to questions as time allows. The balloting process. Councilwoman Virtue talked a lot about the changes in this thing. We like to think it's been an evolution for the better. In the past, if we were here 3 months ago even, we would have been talking about a petition process where some group of volunteers would have to go and get 70% of every homeowner, not just resident homeowner, which may live in California or who knows where. They were supposed to sign a petition. It was taking forever. We were not getting these things on the ground like we wanted to. The new process is this. We're going to send, after we go through our second meeting, we're going to then send everyone that lives on Piccadilly Row. If your property abuts the right-of-way of Piccadilly Row, we're going to send you a balloting card. It looks like that up in the upper left-hand corner. You scan the QR code. It takes you right to Nashville.gov. It's a special voting page where you can look at the plans and you can vote. Do you like this or not? Yes or no. And that stays open for 6 weeks. Our old process was 6 months, so now we've cut it to 6 weeks. And after that 6 weeks, we look at that, and if we've got, of the people who voted, not the whole number of property owners, of the people who vote, just like a real election, if 66% of the people are in favor, we'll do the project, okay? That's how we make sure people have the information, that this is not just 1 or 2 people that think this is a good idea, that the neighborhood as a whole, approves of this change to the street. I think that's it. If they don't count against you either way. So again, that's why we do only the people who respond are we counting that vote. So if you don't respond, it's just like a real election. You just didn't respond.
Can I ask one question about that? What about the snow and the ice? Will that accumulate on top of these things?
In the way it does on pavement, yes. Is this street plowed? Do you know if this is a plowed street? Yeah. And you see these kind of rubber things, yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing is we do have that sign at every location, so you will know that there's something there. You'll probably still see it if you are out in that snow, but yeah. We haven't had any issues with them being plowed up or anything like that. The drivers know pretty well where they are.
So back to the percentage of once you go out with the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
Say it is the percentage where it's again. So do the process start all over with another idea, or what goes on?
Yeah, typically what we would do is come back and with another meeting and talk through that and say, you know, are there other tools that if we're not putting speed cushions or something you have to drive over, we don't even ballot at all. If all we were proposing are feedback signs, for instance, we wouldn't even require a ballot. So we can talk about a different type of a strategy like that. But yeah.
So only Piccadilly Road vote.
Only Piccadilly vote. We know, and people are affected. Yeah, yeah. And we talked all. We know there's pros and cons to that approach, but the rationale is in some neighborhoods, Piccadilly Road, most of the cul-de-sacs are pretty short, and it's not a lot of houses off of Piccadilly Road. Sometimes that's not the case. Some of these streets, you know, you may have a cul-de-sac that may be 50 or a whole neighborhood comes off of the road we're trying to treat. The problem there is those people aren't impacted by the speed the way the people that actually live on the street are. And so they're inconvenienced by speed cushions. They may see it that way, but at the same time, they're not seeing the speed every day. They're just trying to get home. And so that's the rationale, but we certainly understand the point and respect that. This is a Metro funded, comes out of the general fund. Yeah. Yeah. And it's about it's about $800 per cushion. It's about $2,000 per location, something like that, $2,000 to $3,000.
You're asking just to make sure it's not a charge to the HOA.
Oh, it's not. No. Yeah, this is a general funded. Councilwoman Vercher and her colleagues at council have been very generous to this program. It's well funded because it is so popular and so in demand, and so yeah, it's a Metro program.
So that would be a $20,000 investment that the state is making to our neighborhood.
I'd say at least, yeah. We'll have more formal cost estimates as we get a little further along, but you know.
Well, in addition to because the pavement and the markings and the maintenance.
Right. Yeah, that is not an insignificant.
Not considering other areas.
And along these same lines, I've reported litter and mowing problems along Unit Antioch, and the department has responded like within 3 days. The mowers come out. There was a sign down by Knightsbridge Way. I reported it on Hub. The next day, it was back up. Now it's down again. So this new organization is responsive. This new city department is responsible.
That's good to hear. Yeah.
I think that's what is essential for Blue Mountain. We don't know that there's a there, but people need to keep calling the police when there are incidents. So the more data is out there, the easier it will be for us to support the request for that road. And, you know, there's many complaints, but sometimes people do not report anything to the hub, or they don't call the police.
Have you ever tried to call HOA and put it on the phone forever and leave your number and then call you back?
We need to be clear on our terminology here.
Yeah.
The HOA, at least as we use it in Pinnacle Point, is a group of residents in Pinnacle Point who meet like we are now. The management company is Timmons.
Yeah.
Timmons is not the HOA. So.
But that's who you send your money to.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, that's who I know.
Timmons, don't call it the HOA.
But then let us know after this meeting, stay for a minute and let us know if you guys have tried to contact him and if you have not been able to get any answers, we need to know.
Yeah.
Because we contract them, and if that's not working, we need to know. But we have heard, exactly, we need to know if you have tried and you're not getting any answers, we need to know.
Well, let's just keep it like Shanique said, let's just move forward with this. And we get Julie and them make an announcement after this, and hopefully we can get another homeowner association meeting, because we need one. And then, you know, maybe once this gets going, we'll see if it slow down, because, you know, people are gonna do what they wanna do. They're gonna drive whatever speed limit they wanna drive, and these are young people, all these cars making all this noise, and they ain't going on but 25, but whatever. Anyway. Let's get past this on Pinnacle Point, and then we can start making applications for Blue Mountain and anywhere else. So Blue Mountain is totally affected by people speeding in the park. But we'll let that be another topic.
Are open right now. So we have to start somewhere.
Yeah, and this is where we need to start.
Jeff, do you know when the next cycle of applications is open?
Yeah, gonna help us.
First of the year.
So in January, well.
Because it just closed, it was in,
They
it
put
was
it on the store.
in August, yeah.
Happening, so we need to put up in Winston, and have to do that.
And I want you to post it in there. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
One question. Can we get signage to prevent semis from parking on Piccadilly Road coming up the year? Certain times of the year, sunset, you can't see anything. And we've had one accident in Noah.
Oh, and they're parking
On the right side.
on down on this end?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That is a good question. So the question was, are there signs that would prevent semis? If it's semis specifically, I'm not sure. Now, I don't know why semis are going. Is it like a resident that drives there and parks their truck? That's tough, because I don't know of anything that precludes one class of a vehicle or another from parking on the street, as long as it's done responsibly and they're not blocking the street or something. You know what I mean? We may not.
Because certain times of the year, when the sun sets, coming up the hill, you can't see. One guy
You can sign no parking at all. I know you can do that. So I would encourage you to go to the hub and make that request, and then see if they can come up with something in traffic engineering, and they can come. But that'd be the only thing I would know to do is totally prevent it. The thing about that is, I mean, I can't imagine there's many people that park along that. The truck's probably doing it because, hey, it's wide open. Nobody else parks down here because there's no houses anywhere around. But
I was going to speak to that. The only time there's parking up there, because again, my house butts up against that, so I see it. The only time there's parking on that road is two situations. One, the semi, just the one.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the road is icy, people can't.
Yeah, they're down at the bottom of the hill. Yeah.
But you can, you know, I think, I believe that more of the white stanchions all the way along that stretch would be helpful, rather than just by the area. Because if
kind of keep you in the lane.
more stanchions are going to prevent that semi from parking there, but also people can get in between those stanchions, you know, as much as they can when they need to park during the hike. So I think that more of those white stanchions
We'll look at that.
would solve both those problems.
Yeah. We were having a.
From like Luna, like where the stoplight is, all the way up to the second entrance of Blue Mountain. On the right side of the street, there is no driveway. So like you could really like do a pretty solid of those white poles up that whole one side. Like you make a great place to walk because it's a little bit sheltered and protected. And then plus you've taken out that like, let me just straighten out this part.
It's a good comment, good thought. We haven't come up with anything better on such a steep hill, so we'll look at that and see. And I don't disagree. That would at least keep you in the two travel lanes. I mean, you still may cross over the double yellow, but at least it cuts down some of that pavement to work with on speeds.
Yeah, instead of white markers over free fall, everybody's ever been over free fall. They've got these little triangles that make rubberized, go along the side of the wheel, raised this high,
Yeah.
rubberized.
Yeah.
But if you get them,
You know it. Yeah. That's a street called San Marcos. I know exactly where it is, and they've held up well. You don't see those. Those they're almost invisible, and so they're low. So from an aesthetic standpoint, they're kind of nice because it's not the only thing you see. But from a safety, that's a little bit of a different context than what this is with the grades and everything. But yeah, that's a nice tool there. I'm sorry.
What is the name of that?
They're almost like if you put a wheel stop in a parking space, like a curb. It's smaller than that, but it's yeah, it looks like a wheel stop. I mean, but it's rubber and it has a little reflective strip, but they get hit a lot. We've used a different product in East Nashville. We call them armadillos because they look kind of like half a football turned upside down. Those didn't fare as well. They got hit and were not as good a product. But we had another comment. Okay, so question was if we have a low turnout. We've been telling people if 10 people vote and 7 of them are in favor, we'll do it. I don't think we're going to have that problem. We've got about 7 or 8 neighborhoods balloting right now, and every one of them are voting. I mean, we're getting tons of responses. I don't think we'll have the issue of a low ballot, but theoretically, yeah, we would still do it. But we'll kind of.
Like the apartment owners get to vote, and does their vote count for any more than just one?
No. So the apartments, not every resident would vote. No.
So like if the business gets to vote, that's still just one.
It should be one.
They don't get to be like 20 votes.
Mm-mm. No.
Yeah, that's huge. All of them.
What is 60%?
And keep in mind these cards go to the property owner. So if I don't know what the rental percentage here is, but if you don't own the property, you won't get a card. It's going to the landlord wherever that is. So yeah, every neighborhood has some. Yeah, sure.
Is there a way to break down the vote? Like, because initially it was just the one part of Piccadilly Road, but you extended it. So if that part, the vote is in favor of it, and the other part is not, is there a way you just reduce it to that part?
It's possible. You certainly could. I don't think this street lends itself to that as much as some other streets. Some of the other streets, we're doing 2 streets in the neighborhood, and then it's pretty clear. Yeah, if one street likes it and one doesn't, we'll do the street that likes it. That's not the case here. Some of this stuff will make decisions, if we see what happens, I guess. But I'm sorry.
How often do you get like?
Well, when I said we had 7 or 8 that are voting now, none of those have finished. There's one that closes, I think it's next week. They were the first ones, East Thompson Lane, they were the first ones that have gone to this new process. So I'm not making any predictions, but I don't know. I can't answer that. We haven't had any close, so I can't tell you. Yeah.
So after the voting, what's the timeline of getting started and finished?
So, okay, good question. After the voting closes, what's our timeline look like? So at that point, if it's favorable, we would then order the materials. It's a company called TrafficCalming, and right now they're like 8 to 10 weeks. It's supply chain like everybody. Everybody just says supply chain to get the rubber, to get the materials. Yeah, and then we would. It's probably going to be hopefully early spring, maybe late winter. The sooner we could do that, the better, because the crews that install this are the crews that do striping. They can't stripe when it's less than 50 degrees, but they can put these things down. So we'll hope we'll have a big batch of them for them to do over the winter time. If it's drizzly and messy, they can go install speed cushion. They're already under contract, so that we don't have that delay. They're ready to go. It's just that delay in getting the material is the biggest time. I'm not hearing major changes. We'll look at the delineators, the additional use of those, and especially around the curves, and then we'll come back and finish our plans up. I'm guessing we'll be ready in we could be ready in 4 or 5 weeks, but we're scheduling meetings out now into about the middle of October just because we got so many neighborhoods and working through those meetings. So November-ish, we would be ready. And then what's kind of like what y'all's schedule like. If we can do it before the holidays, it would be great.
So when a application is submitted, it's already, once it's approved by budget. So is it approved by budget or what you think it's gonna cost, or is it any contingency in that budget if it should go?
We won't go over them.
Oh.
But the council gives this program a budget, periodically, like once a year.
Yeah.
It doesn't always follow a strict schedule, but and then that covers us for some number of neighborhoods. So once we make the commitment to the neighborhood, we know, these are not going to be $1 million projects.
Yeah.
When we said 20,000 a minute ago, that's a significant number, but by standards of paving and sidewalks, and that's a pretty low cost, project for us. And so we're pretty comfortable. I mean, we know we've got funding for it. So the funding is not an issue for this. Yeah. Oh, no, this project won't. No. All 24 are in. We wouldn't announce them if we thought there was any chance it's not going to get funded. As long as they're not requesting a pedestrian bridge over the road or some magnificent thing. But yeah, I think we're good.
Any more questions? Do you have anything else?
I do not. Thank you all so much for your time and Councilwoman for your participation in this.
We got one more question and I'll put this out.
Yes, ma'am, but the question is, I would like to direct you.
Okay.
I know that this is not an HOA meeting, although some of us came under the impression that it is. I would just ask you as being our representative, if you would drive through our neighborhoods and you would look at what is going on, what we're having, the conditions outside that we're having to contend with. This is not the same community that I moved into 16 years ago. I had things stolen out of my yard. It's just, we need help, or we need to be empowered to where we can be as strong as those other homeowners associations and really enact the bylaws that we have.
Okay, so what we'll do, we'll just have a little impromptu meeting. I'm just going to close us out for the people that's online. I want to thank Mount Zion and Bishop Walker. Also want to thank Joshua for setting us up and Sharon McKinney. We're always grateful for you allowing us to use your space. And that's going to conclude the Pinnacle Point HOA traffic calming meeting. Thank you, everyone.